Doris, welcome to The Story. We are still deep into politics and the election, and a new batch of returns is being reported right now. We expect those from Clackamas and Multnomah County, and we're going to get them up as soon as we possibly can. The biggest race we've been watching is Oregon governor. Tina Kotek has the lead, and the Oregonian has called her as the winner. Let's take a look at the numbers now. And you can see that Kotek has about 47% of the vote, Drazen with about 44%, Betsy Johnson coming in third with about 9% of the vote. Blair Best joins me now. Blair, a lot of people think it's really too early to be calling this race, but the results do show that Kotek's lead is growing.
Pat, while it may seem too early for us to see a projected winner, new results from Multnomah and Clackamas counties just dropped. Let's break them down. Overall, Tina Kotek is ahead by about 46,000 votes. That's a jump from 30,000 about an hour ago. In Multnomah County, Kotek has about 72% of the vote, and Christine Drazen about 20%. In Clackamas County, where Drazen is from, 47% of the vote is for Drazen and 43% for Kotek. Now, Christine Drazen is not conceding. She instead put out a statement around noon today saying, "We are grateful to the many thousands of Oregonians who made their voices heard in this historic election. We continue to monitor returns with the expectation that this race will tighten. We hope to release an additional statement later today." So far, we haven't received an updated statement from Drazen, but as we just showed you, the latest numbers show Kotek's lead is growing. And so far, no word from Kotek's campaign, even after she was projected as the winner by the Oregonian. Pat?
All right, thank you, Blair. Another big thing that we're watching has to do with the supermajority that Democrats have in the Oregon House and Senate. It allows them to pass tax bills without any help from Republicans, so it's a big deal. But we can now say that is gone, at least in the state Senate. Let's take a look back here. It looks like Republicans Cedric Hayden and Suzanne Weber and Kim Thatcher are each on the way to winning seats that were held by Democrats. At the same time, Republican Bill Kennemer is in a bit of trouble as Democrat Mark Meek tries to take Kennemer's seat. Now, if all that holds, it means that Republicans would pick up a net of 2 seats, leaving Senate Democrats with 15 members, Republicans with 13, and independents with 2. Democrats needed to keep 18 members for that supermajority on the tax measures, which of course does not mean that they can't be passing tax measures. It just means they need to convince the independents or 2 Republicans to join them in voting yes. Now, let's move over to the House side here and take a look. It appears likely the supermajority has gone there as well. We're still waiting for final returns, but it does look like Democrats lost 3 seats to Republicans. Democrats needed to keep 36 seats for that tax supermajority, but it's looking like maybe they're going to have 34. They can still pass tax measures as well. It's just harder now because they need to get at least 2 Republicans to agree. Meanwhile, Portland voters have said they want a new form of government. Let's take a look at this. Here's a look at how the numbers are looking tonight with the charter reform passing. People in the current government say that's great. They're ready and busy planning for the change to that. At a news conference today, Charter Commission leaders did a ceremonial handoff of the baton to the chief executive officer for the city now. And let's hope that my read and the actual change to the new government is not as awkward as what you're about to see.
Portlanders have set a new course for our city government. Now it's the city's responsibility to implement the will of the voters.
Passing the baton.
Passing the baton. Over here, there you go.
All right, a little awkward there, but fortunately things did get better after that. In case you missed it, in 2 years, Portland's form of government will change. In 2025, there will be 12 city commissioners instead of 5, and they will not control huge city departments like they do now. The city will be carved into 4 geographic areas and 3 commissioners elected from each area. The election will be done using ranked choice voting. The mayor will no longer vote with the council except to break a tie. The mayor and a city manager are going to run the city departments. Shoshana Oppenheim is the city's project manager running this transition.
To my fellow Portlanders, whether you supported the measure or you voted no, thank you for engaging with us and for speaking up. We will center you in our work every day and continue to work to gain your trust as we make changes to Portland's form of government and election methods. The opportunity in front of us is remarkable. Portlanders are relying on us to carry out historic changes for them. Changes to the way our representatives are elected and the way our city government is structured. It is an honor to work on delivering these promises while remaining focused on the core values that Director Watson just identified, the values of equity, anti-racism, collaboration, communication, transparency, and fiscal responsibility.
The city, by the way, is going to hire more people to help with the transition. They say it's going to cost between $4 and $6 million a year for each of the next 3 years to get this thing done. And in the meantime, if you live in Portland and you want to be involved in the changes, you can get involved. The city's looking for volunteers right now for 3 different commissions. Here's Portland's Chief Administrative Officer.
In doing this, we will continue to engage Portlanders, and doing so, some of the first things that will happen is that we will be asking and recruiting members to fill 3 community bodies. 1, an independent district commission to establish those geographic districts that I spoke of. 2nd, a salary commission, which is mandated by the charter, to set salaries for elected officials. And then lastly, a charter transition advisory committee to advise the staff and council on the overall process of transition. Throughout that transition, we remain committed to providing transparent information and seeking community input, with a continued emphasis on reaching communities who have historically lacked access to government decision-making.
And if you want to take part, go to the city's website and check it out. A lot's going to be happening in the next 2 years. Everything needs to be in place before the November 2024 election. Sticking with city government for a moment, a new commissioner is heading to council as businessman and political newcomer Renee Gonzalez defeated incumbent Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. She told supporters she loves the city, and even if she is no longer on the council, she is not going anywhere. And that brings us to Measure 114, which has been called one of the strictest gun control measures in the country. You can see here that voters approved it according to the Oregonian's projection, but by a slim margin. But what exactly will Measure 114 look like? Well, let's take a look. Anyone who wants to buy a gun in Oregon will have to get a permit first. Those will be issued by local law enforcement in a process that will be created and overseen by Oregon State Police. As of now, that process is still kind of in flux. What we do know is this: the steps to getting a permit include completing a gun safety class and submitting to a federal criminal background check, which does include getting your fingerprints taken. The permits could cost up to $65 and would be good for 5 years. Once you complete those steps and paid the fee, local law enforcement would have 30 days to issue the permit. And if you're denied, there is an appeal process. If you are approved for a permit, there's no limit to the number of guns you can buy. It's not like one permit is only good for one gun. These permits would not be required to own a gun, by the way, only to purchase one. So that means that current legal gun owners do not need a permit unless they want to buy a new gun. The measure also bans ammunition magazines that hold more than 10 rounds, with the exception being people who already have those kinds of magazines. They can keep them. New ones just cannot be sold. The measure also closes a loophole in the system now, which says that anyone with a pending background check can still buy a gun after 3 business days. Well, that's not going to be the case under 114. It takes that loophole away. So when does the measure actually take effect? Well, typically Thursday, December 8th is the effective date of these voter-approved measures. But because so much of this measure depends on programs and processes that don't really exist yet, the practical impact is basically to be determined. There's also a possibility of a lawsuit of some kind. Many argue that any law that makes it harder to own a gun violates the Second Amendment, and that would obviously complicate the law's implementation as well. Also, our team tried to contact several gun shops today. None of them were interested in talking on camera, although one shop owner did tell us he's afraid the measure could put him out of business. On the flip side, advocates are thrilled that it's been approved, including Reverend Mark Knutson. He's the chair of Lift Every Voice Oregon. That's the nonprofit that was the driving force behind 114.
Those who oppose this, we honor their opinions and really want to dialogue as we move forward with this. But we did win a victory for our children and youth, and for all the families in this state who have lost somebody to gun violence, who have been crying out, please, can we do something?
In Washington's 3rd Congressional District, let's look at the results here as well. This race has national attention. If a Democrat takes back this Republican seat, it could impact which party has control of the U.S. House next session. Evan Watson is live outside the Clark County Elections Office. Evan, this race is tight, and you've learned it could take days to find out who's going to win. What's going on?
Yeah, it could take some time, but first, we just got an update in within the last hour here, and Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, the Democrat in this race, has maintained her lead of about 11,000 votes, a 5-point margin over Republican Joe Kent. So that is a big deal and a signal of what could be to come with most of those votes outstanding in Clark County. But still, as you mentioned, Clark County still has about 70,000 votes, I'm told from elections officials, that they need to count and then report over the coming days. Both the Gluesenkamp-Perez and the Kent campaign say this may take a couple of days before we know the winner here. Now, Clark County election workers spent today verifying signatures and looking at those inspected ballots, of course. Many of those ballots were returned at drop boxes on Election Day or received in the mail yesterday or today. Clark County Auditor Greg Kimsey says that county election workers can get through about 20,000 ballots in one day. So that means expect another update tomorrow night and another one Friday and maybe even beyond that. So why does it take so long? Well, county election workers had already been processing ballots they received in the weeks leading up to Election Day, so that helps with quicker counting and results. But when about 90,000 ballots arrive on or shortly after Election Day, if they're postmarked, of course, officials say that takes some time. Of course, every elections department operates at different speeds with different sized staffs, all making sure vote counts are accurate and first, but then quickly reported. But of course, this big update has a large impact in the race and could signal what's to come here, Pat.
Well, Evan, and I know that you've been in touch or trying to be in touch with the campaigns today. What are they saying about the length of time it's going to take to count all these up?
Yeah, knowing that it's about 20,000 a day, they're expecting another couple of days, and they've been fairly quiet. No public statements today so far, as it stands right now, from either campaign about the results. So I expect that might change tonight, especially from the Gluesenkamp-Perez side, now that she's maintained her lead, or we might be waiting until Thursday or Friday to learn a little bit more from her.
That does make sense, waiting on their part to just kind of see really where this is going. Hey, by the way, you covered the two sides last night. How did that go? Were folks friendly?
Yeah, so we started out at the Gluesenkamp-Perez event, and we talked to her briefly before results came in. We did then hop over to Kent's campaign event, and they did not allow the press any access to get into what they were covering. We were told Joe might speak, and then we're told that he would not give any public statement last night to members of the media. A campaign manager said they feel fine about the results and the deficit, and they believe that they're going to pick up votes here to come in the days to follow, although we saw today that Gluesenkamp-Perez kept her lead. So I imagine she is the happier of the two candidates as it stands currently.
And I understand that they said if you were Laurel Porter, they would have let you in.
That is correct, but alas, Pat, I am not Laurel Porter. Can't confirm.
None of us are. All right, thanks, dude. There are still races to be called, including the one in Washington. We'll continue to update election numbers on air and online. You can find the latest anytime at kgw.com and on the KGW app. Still to come tonight. Election night is a big deal, not only to the public, but to all of us here in the newsroom. We want to bring you the best, most accurate coverage we can, and a lot of hard work goes into making that happen. We have behind-the-scenes looks at how we do it and the secret ingredient that newsrooms around the country employ. That's coming up next. Election night really is a big deal for newsrooms across America. It is all hands on deck. You saw a lot of us on the air at events across the metro area, but there were many more people working hard behind the scenes all night to get you the results. Our producer Ashley Koch takes you behind the scenes now.
Election coverage gets into gear around 2:30 in the afternoon. Our crews gather together for a meeting in the newsroom to make sure everyone is ready. Dinner arrives for the field crews before they head out to election night parties for the biggest races we're following. Blair Best heads to Silverton for Christine Drazen's party at the Oregon Garden, and it's Drazen night. Pat Doris is covering Tina Kotek's election party in Northeast Portland. Check out the giant Tina head her supporters brought.
Hey, Catherine Cook here in St. Helens at the Betsy Johnson campaign with photojournalist Mike Gallimanis.
More glasses.
I don't think these are prescription, but they look delicious.
Back in the newsroom, the real hero of democracy arrives, the election night pizza. Ask any journalist. This is a big deal. After the ballot deadline passes at 8, everything picks up fast. Results start rolling in, and our election coverage begins.
1 minute.
Our streaming show covers the races online all night long.
Good evening and live from the KGW studios. We have an update on your local election results tonight.
And we have updates on the air twice an hour until 11. Meanwhile, our web team is making sure you've got the latest updates on our website, KGW News app, and social media. It culminates with our 11 o'clock show, where each reporter in the field is featured to bring us up to speed with the latest results.
David, Laura, we're expecting to hear from Christine Drazen at any moment tonight.
After the 11 o'clock show, some folks stick around well into the early morning hours to update results, because there are still big races up in the air for us to cover Wednesday and beyond.
Yep, that's what it was like. Hey, by the way, how was election night for you? And what do you think of these results? Send us an email. Our address is thestory@kgw.com. You could also call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. We really want to know what you think. We're that kind of a show. We want the feedback. All right, still to come on The Story. He's known as the Interstate Bridge Ghost, and our team is taking a closer look at a century-old mystery that claimed the life of the then mayor of Vancouver. How the story extends from 1920 to the present day. It's coming up after the break. A new episode of KGW's podcast Wicked West is out today. The series dives into mysterious Northwest folklore, and that's exactly what we have for you tonight. In episode 3, we bring you the story of the former mayor of Vancouver who died mysteriously in 1920 and is said to haunt the interstate bridge to this day.
On a rainy, cold morning in October of 1920, Grover Percival, the outgoing mayor of Vancouver, Washington, went out for a leisurely walk around town. He had recently decided not to run for re-election and seemed happy to focus on his family and his successful insurance business.
And Grover was seen walking around downtown, tipping his hat to the ladies, happy.
He smiled as he enjoyed the view during his walk across the newly built interstate bridge. As mayor, Grover had helped get the bridge built a few years prior. It connected Vancouver to Portland and Washington to Oregon. Grover took this walk over his prized interstate bridge often, but his stroll on this drizzly autumn day would be his last.
And then he didn't come home that night.
By the next day, almost the entire town was out searching for the missing mayor. Businesses downtown closed early. Hundreds of men searched high and low around all parts of the city and the Columbia River.
They found bodies downstream, and the family would go, and no, it wasn't him.
Days passed with no trace of Grover. The local newspaper kept a running tab on his absence.
In fact, the Columbian had a little box up in the upper right-hand corner, still no sign of the mayor.
Rumors flew. Maybe the mayor drowned, or left on a train out of town, or maybe someone killed him. After all, as a politician who fought to build the controversial interstate bridge, Grover had enemies. Some townspeople were very angry about the cost of building the bridge and the tolls that came with it. Nearly a month went by. Coordinated searches started to dwindle. Then, on a cold November day, a hunter discovered an ominous scene in a wilderness area a few miles from town.
Found the mayor hanging from a tree by his handkerchief.
Grover left no farewell note to his wife or family. Investigators declined to call for a formal inquest, saying there was no evidence of foul play.
It was put down as a suicide, though no one could point to a reason. Said he was in good shape, his business was in good shape.
But those who knew Grover refused to believe he did this intentionally. They speculated that he was murdered. Those whispers of something sinister have taken on a life of their own over the decades. They've morphed into a modern-day ghost story. People have reported seeing an apparition of a tall, slender man wearing a fedora walking across the bridge at night.
They had seen a tall, slender figure walking south on the old span. The southbound span is the 100-plus-year-old span. And when the figure got to the hump, it would disappear.
The description of the ghost doesn't match anyone else who perished near the bridge, like those who jumped to their deaths or drowned in the river below. Many believe it's the missing mayor.
He is seen now walking toward Hayden Island to his doom. Whether it was suicide or murder, no one ever knew.
So even though Grover Percival's life ended, his story certainly has not. Today, he's known as the Interstate Bridge Ghost.
How about that? Think about that next time you drive across the bridge. This is the third of 6 stories about the dark history of the Pacific Northwest. For the full stories, look for the Wicked West podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also see photos and learn much more about the series at kgw.com/wickedwest. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We'll finish things up right after this. The KGW Great Toy Drive officially starts today. We want to thank Fred Meyer, IQ Credit Union, Ziply Fiber, and local Toyota dealers for everything they're doing to make this year's supply drive such a great success. One of the best ways you can help is to give online. Go to kgw.com/toy and click Donate Cash. If you make a cash donation online, we will shop for you. Your donation supports local toy stores and over 150 nonprofits. Let's help make kids wake up to a great holiday. And before we go tonight, we want to highlight a viewer email that just came in from Diana. She says she was grinning ear to ear watching our behind the scenes on election night story. She said it was fun to see what was going on as you were at home watching results come in. Diana went on to say, thanks for highlighting those in the newsroom that make the news come to life. Thanks, Diana, for writing in. We couldn't do it without all those folks behind the scenes. And that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW News at 6:30.
Good evening, and we begin at 6:30 with an update on election results and a new leader for the